Alright folks, how's it going? Let's take a look at the next instalment of the Master and Margarita slow read. I'm Cams Campbell, your host, and today we're looking at chapters 26 to 28. And I've got the subtitle here of Even in the Moonlight, I Have No Peace. So this is going to be my reading of the essay that I've just written for Substack, which goes out at camscampbellreads.substack.com. And you'll see all of the images there that I've included as part of the essay. They're really good. The images for this novel, by the way, spectacular. This will be going out on YouTube and as a podcast and as an essay. So you've got 3 different ways of consuming what I'm making. And obviously if you want to see the artwork, one of those methods won't work for you. So you need to go and look at the essay on Substack or watch the video. It's also going to have a printable version that will go out so that you can print it and read it offline. So that will have all the images removed as well, so that you won't use up a lot of ink printing out the images. Text only. And that was an idea that I got from Matthew over at Beyond the Bookshelf. So without any further ado, let's get into the essay. And you might hear Clover the Basset Hound barking in the background, because that's what she does. She's in the hallway just barking for no reason. Right. Welcome to the penultimate instalment of our slow read of the Master and Margarita. This week we're reading 3 chapters, starting in Yerushalayim and then heading back to Moscow for some crazy times with Behemoth and Koroviev. Today's artist is Olga Grablevskaya, or is it Grabliovskaya? Not sure. A graduate of the Book Graphics Department of the Repin Institute in St. Petersburg. Follow me, reader. Za mной, читатель. Chapter 26, The Burial. Perhaps it was this dusk that was the reason for the sharp change in the procurator's appearance. It was as if he had become visibly older, bent, and anxious besides. The procurator sinks into a depression and realises what's causing his spiritual malaise. It all stems from his cowardice in condemning Yeshua to death, but he's engaging in self-deception. It feels all too familiar in the modern world, choosing the easy thing over the right thing, and how that can lead to low mood. Quote, and now he wanted to make amends for what had been lost by some petty and worthless but, most importantly, belated actions. End quote. He could almost have been doom-scrolling. His dog Banga gives him comfort. As a fellow dog lover and owner, I can relate. Except when they're barking when you're trying to make a podcast, right? There's an image here of Pilate sitting with his dog, and he looks like he's got a headache, as Pilate often does. Meanwhile, Afranius, the chief of the secret police, is at work. His men are heading out of the city with carts loaded with entrenching tools and water to bury the 3 executed captives. Afranius stays in the city and finds his way to Greek Street. It makes me think of the location in London's Soho area where Les Cousins Folk Club was located. It's still a place with a vibrant counterculture, and it sounds like it was the same in Yerushalayim. He pays a visit to a woman named Nisa, but we're not party to their conversation, which lasts no more than 5 minutes. Afranius leaves and Nisa gets dressed in the dark without the help of her handmaid. Her handmaid reminds Nisa that her husband has forbidden her from visiting Entanta. She's a procuress, that Entanta of yours. I'll tell your husband. A young man emerges from a lane in the lower town. He's described as having a hook nose. He's making his way to Caiapha, the high priest's palace. Next time we see him, he's leaving the palace and walking with a jaunty step back to the marketplace amidst the throngs that have come out for the festival. He catches sight of a woman and quickens his pace. It's only when he catches up with her that we learn who they are, Judas and Nisa. They are secret lovers. And then there's an image here by Olga Grabliovskaya. They hide in a courtyard, and then Nisa instructs Judas to make his way to the olive estate in Gethsemane. Anyone who knows their Bible will recognise that name and figure out what's coming, even if it had not been telegraphed in the previous chapter. Judas heads there and is murdered by two men. A third man in a hooded cloak approaches. He instructs the murderers to leave quickly with the purse they've taken from Judas, no doubt his payment from the high priest. The hooded man leaves Judas's body in the garden of Gethsemane and crosses the river where his horse is tied up. He changes into a military chlamys, helmet and short sword when he reaches his horse, and then re-enters Jerusalem through the southern gate. The procurator has a bed made up on the balcony and takes off his cloak and removes his belt, quote, that engirdled his shirt with a broad steel knife in a sheath, end quote, and lay down. Is he the third man? The short sword matches the earlier description of the broad steel knife. We've had descriptions of the moon all through this chapter. It's now shining onto the balcony and leaving a long sliver of light across the floor. The procurator dreams of walking along that sliver of light with his dog and, quote, the vagrant philosopher, end quote. Yeshua, of course. And he laughs out loud in his sleep. Quote, they did not agree with one another about anything, and because of that, their argument was particularly interesting and interminable, end quote. This stood out to me as something that we seem less and less capable of today. We're living in times of #no debate, which is sad. Two men discussing philosophy and disagreeing without animosity. If only. They do agree on one thing though, quote, and cowardice was undoubtedly one of the most terrible vices. So said Yeshua ha-Nozri. No philosopher, I disagree with you. It is the most terrible vice. End quote. The dream discussion continues and the procurator experiences a feeling of joy that he and the philosopher are together. There was no execution. Quote, we shall always be together now, he was told in his sleep by the ragged vagrant philosopher who had crossed the path, and who knows how of the horseman with the golden lance. If there is one, then that means the other is there too. If I am remembered, you too will be remembered straight away. I, a foundling, the son of unknown parents, and you, the son of the astrologer king and the miller's daughter, the beautiful Pila. Yes, don't you forget, you remember me, the astrologer's son, in your prayers, Pilate requested in his sleep. And, securing a nod from the beggar from En Sarid walking next to him in his sleep, the cruel procurator of Judea cried and laughed with joy in his sleep. End quote. The procurator awakens and remembers with dismay that the execution did happen. Banga is growling at the man waiting by the procurator's bed. It's the centurion rat-catcher Marcus. Marcus announces the head of the secret police, Afranius. Afranius enters and requests that he be arrested on the grounds that he was unable to carry out Pilate's orders of keeping Judas from being murdered. He has the blood-stained purse, which had been thrown into the grounds of the high priest's palace. Afranius and the procurator discuss the murder and work out why he, Judas, might have been in the olive grove. The procurator sounds a bit like a killer being interviewed in an episode of Columbo. Only Afranius is no Columbo. They move on to discuss the burial of the three executed men. Afranius explains that his men had found two bodies. The third had been removed and later found in a cave with Levi Matthew. He was ranting, but the men managed to calm him down by telling him that Yeshua's body was to be buried. He's permitted to join the burial party, which he does. He's then brought back to the city, which pleases the procurator as he wants to see him. He rewards Afranius with a ring and asks that he reward his men for their good work. Levi is brought in. He's tired and hungry. The procurator offers him food, which he refuses. The procurator then asks to see the knife that Afranius had described Levi as having, but it has been taken away by the soldiers. The knife is brought in by a soldier, and Pilate tells Levi that he'll see it returned to its owner at the bakery. He then asks Levi to show him his notes of Yeshua's teachings. It contains a line from the book of Revelation and then a line that causes Pilate to start, quote, "greater vice, cowardice," end quote. Pilate hands Levi back his scroll and then offers him a job as a librarian. Levi rejects it. He then goes on to tell Pilate that he intends to murder Judas. Pilate takes delight in telling him that this will be impossible as he himself has already murdered him. At that, Levi softens and asks for a piece of clean parchment. Levi leaves, and we leave Pilate sleeping on his couch as the moon sets. Quote, "Thus the 5th procurator of Judea, Pontius Pilate, greeted the dawn of the 15th of Nisan." End quote. Chapter 27, the end of apartment number 50. Everything was as if that was the way it should be. Morning has arrived for Margarita. The building is quiet and she goes to sleep. Meanwhile, the secret police headquarters is buzzing with activity as they investigate the case of Voland and his retinue. Arkady Apollonovich Sempilyarov, chairman of the Acoustic Commission of Moscow Theatres, is called to the investigation. Remember, we met him in chapter 12. He was the one whose affair was exposed during the magic show. I guess his wife has forgiven him, as it is she who takes the call and wakes him from a headache-induced sleep to come to the phone. He goes to the station where his testimony is taken. A satirical scene follows in which we're told that the head of the programming department of the Spectacles Commission has stated that the magic show couldn't possibly have happened as there is no paperwork of any kind. Remember the earlier quote from Koroviev, "No document, and there's no person either." How could there have been a practitioner of black magic in town if he hadn't registered anywhere? Prokhor Petrovich, chairman of the main Spectacles Commission, has reappeared in his empty suit and is now approving all the resolutions his empty suit had endorsed. Despite the many witnesses to the antics of Voland and his entourage, no trace of them is to be found. Rimsky is later found in a hotel room in Leningrad. He requests a padded cell. He's put on the evening train with a guard to return him to Moscow. The search for Likhodiev reveals that he was in Yalta, but that he's on a flight to Moscow. Varenukha still can't be found. There's also the mystery of the theft of Berlioz's head from the Griboyedov. 12 investigators are on the case. 12 disciples? Coincidence? I think not. A young, round-faced investigator enters Ivan Bezdomny's room at Stravinsky's clinic. Quote, "Lying on the bed, he saw a pale and pinched-looking young man with eyes in which could be read an absence of interest in what was happening around him, with eyes that were turned at times to some place in the distance above his surroundings, at times inwards, inside himself." Anyone else here getting Crime and Punishment vibes? If only the investigator had come on Thursday when Ivan was desperate for people to listen to his story. It reminds us of just how little time has passed since that evening at Patriarch's Ponds. The whole story takes place over just 4 days of Holy Week, both in Moscow and in Yerushalayim. Ivan gives cursory answers to the investigator's questions and states, when asked, that he won't be writing any more poetry. The mystery of flat number 50 has everyone baffled. Its exits are all monitored. No one is going in or coming out, with the exception of Baron Miguel. But when search is made for him, he's not there, even though he was seen going in but not coming out. On Saturday morning, a small plane from Crimea lands in Moscow, bringing with it Likhodiev. He requests that he be incarcerated in a safe cell. Varenukha is soon found in his apartment, having reappeared there after an absence of some 48 hours. He's questioned, then requests that he be locked away for safety. Rimsky arrives from Leningrad. He is questioned and then requests a padded cell. Anushka is also arrested after passing off a $10 bill in a shop. Remember, Koroviev had paid her in rubles? That old trick once again. Nikolai Ivanovich is also questioned and tells the investigators of his ordeal and presents his document that certifies he was at Satan's ball. I've got a great image here of Hela typing up that certificate with Behemoth putting his paw print on it and Nikolai Ivanovich standing looking grumpy in the background. The investigators then enter the building of 302 bis Sadovaya Street and make their way up the stairs. Volan's retinue are in flat 50 and they hear the footsteps on the stairs. Quote, "It's them coming to arrest us," Azazello replied, and downed a shot of brandy. "Ah, well, was Koroviev's reply to that." End quote. The investigators pick the lock and enter the flat. It seems empty other than a large cat on the mantelpiece holding a Primus stove. They attempt to capture the cat in a silk net, but miss, smashing a jug instead. Behemoth pulls out a pistol and aims at the investigator, but the investigator shoots first and Behemoth is hit. He takes a swig of petrol from the Primus and is miraculously healed. A shootout ensues with clip after clip unloaded, yet nobody is hit. And we've got a fun image there of Behemoth with his pistol and the soldiers aiming their guns at Behemoth. The scene ends as Behemoth escapes out the window while spilling petrol, which catches fire all by itself, quote, "in a way that never happens," end quote. That line reminds me a little of a line from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, quote, "The ships hung in the sky in much the same way that bricks don't," end quote. In fact, now that I think about it, there are more than a few similarities between these two authors. The Vogon's infinite forms in triplicate, cosmic bureaucracy and philosophy mixed with slapstick. There's no evidence that Douglas Adams read Bulgakov, but they seem to have shared a similar sensibility, suggesting that the best way to reveal the flaws of human nature and the illusion of power is through satire. Volan's retinue retires through the window. Quote, "At the same time as the heart-rending ringing of bells on long red vehicles racing from all parts of the city was heard on Sadovaya, the people rushing around in the courtyard saw how, together with the smoke, out from a fourth-floor window there flew 3 dark, seemingly male silhouettes and one of a naked woman." End quote. Will we meet them again, I wonder? Chapter 28, The Final Adventures of Koroviev and Behemoth. Indeed we will. 15 minutes after the fire starts at flat 50, Koroviev and Behemoth are seen at the Torgsin, or foreign trade shop, at the market. The doorman declares that cats aren't allowed, whereupon Behemoth transforms into a cat-like man. The doorman then informs them, somewhat rudely, that rubles aren't allowed, only foreign currency. Koroviev argues his way past the irascible doorman, and we're given a description of the piles of products in the shop. What was Torgsin? Torgsin is an acronym for Targovlia s inostrancami, literally trade with foreigners. These were special Soviet shops that operated between 1931 to 1936 and sold foreign luxury goods. Stalin set them up to bring in desperately needed hard currency for industrialisation. Bear in mind that the general Soviet populace was living in poverty. The Holodomor wasn't long past in Ukraine, a man-made famine caused by Stalin's brutal collectivisation regime, exporting grain to bring in hard currency while the local populace starved. Estimates of the death toll vary from 3 to 5 million. The Torgsin scene in the novel reveals how evil exists as part of the plan. Behemoth is portrayed as a poor Soviet citizen reduced to mending Primus stoves to survive. Koroviev makes a speech that the narrator tells us is, quote, extremely silly, tactless and probably politically dangerous, end quote. He's saying what everyone is thinking but doesn't dare utter. He gets some sympathy from the gathering crowd. Chaos ensues in the store and ends up with Behemoth's releasing fuel from the Primus stove, which sets alight all on its own. The crowds exit the store, including the fat lilac foreign man who had been buying salmon and had then fallen into a vat of herring, and Behemoth and Koroviev float up to the ceiling and pop like balloons. The next thing we know, they are on the pavement outside the Griboyedov. Koroviev expresses a desire for a bite to eat and a cold mug of beer, so they make their way into the Griboyedov restaurant, only to be stopped by a doorman, a lovely citizeness. And I've scored out lovely there for reasons which will be apparent when you read the chapter. She asks to see their identification cards, which of course they don't have. Koroviev, quote, Dostoevsky is a writer. Surely it's not necessary to ask for his identification card. Just take any 5 pages from any of his novels and you'll be satisfied without any identification card that you're dealing with a writer. End quote. It seems logical that writers are not identified by credentials. Only remember, no papers, no person. Archibald Archibaldovich intervenes on their behalf and leads them to the best table on the veranda. He's an observant man and has taken note not only of what went down at the Variety Theatre, but also has remembered the words check and cat. He takes care of his special guests personally. He goes off to the kitchen to prepare their fillets, only he makes a detour into the pantry where he locks himself in and places 2 logs of cured sturgeon under his arms. He has a sixth sense that something's about to go down, which of course it does. 3 men, possibly policemen or secret police, enter the restaurant, draw their service revolvers and unload into Koroviev and Behemoth. They both disappear, leaving the Primus behind, which spits a column of fire straight at the awning. The restaurant empties and the chapter ends with Archibald Archibaldovich standing calmly on the pavement in his silk-lined summer coat with his 2 logs of cured sturgeon. And that's the end of this week's instalment. Isn't it exciting? Can you just picture the shootout with Behemoth and the police in flat 50? It's just, what a scene. I know that there are movie adaptations of this. I've yet to watch any of them. I was going to wait until I'd finished rereading the novel before I watched any of that. But I'm very excited to see how this is portrayed on the screen. Because, you know, it could be brilliant. It could be brilliant. Certainly as far as the artwork is concerned, there are several of the artists I've looked at who have done renderings of that scene with the shootout in the flat. Because, I mean, how could you not? It's just such a rich scene for art, isn't it? Anyway, how are you getting on with it? You enjoying the novel? We've only got 1 more instalment to go, and then we'll be done. Isn't it great, though? I have here an advert for a Zoom call, which I announced last week but didn't actually put in the essay. I'm planning to hold a Zoom call for paid subscribers on Sunday the 8th of March at 1800 UTC, which is GMT as well, UK time. So if you fancy coming along and having a chat about the book, that would be awesome. I would love to meet some of my subscribers, especially those of you who've read along with me in this amazing book. So, yeah, and it will be recorded, so I'll be putting out the recording after the fact, also for paid subscribers. I won't make it public because that allows you to feel a little bit safer, I think, on the call. So, you know, keep that in mind if you're on the fence about coming. It's not going to go out to the public. It's only going to go out to my biggest fans. And I thank you all for your support during this read-along. So again, that's going out on Sunday the 8th of March at 1800 UK time. And there's a link here to that Zoom call below the paid subscriber line. So if you want the link, you know what to do. Thanks for tuning in for this episode, and I'll catch you next week in the final one. I'm excited for that. Follow me, reader. Za mной, читатель. See ya.